Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. So nice to see you all here today. So the lighting in here is a little bit weird. It keeps going in and out, keeps getting lighter and darker, but I'm very glad that you guys are all here. It is also sunny here in Vancouver today. There's been some snow on the mountains. Everything is great. Everything is good. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is the live office hours that we do once a month, every month on the last Thursday of every month. And this time just gives us like a little bit of a moment to catch up with everybody and see what everybody's been working on inside the school, and also give you a chance to see what is coming to the school in the next coming months in terms of the courses that we have planned, in terms of the projects that we're going to be working on, and I'll share a little bit with you about what I have been working on as well. So I'm really glad to see you guys all here. I can see you all in the chat here. Brenda and Sharon and Kathy, Leanne, Elena, Jennifer, Chelsea, NY Slide. Sorry, Jessica and Bridget, thanks. Linda is here. Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you guys all for being here. I have so many things to share with you. Now, just as a heads up, if this is the first time that you are joining us for these live office hours, we do record them. We make them available later on for the public, and we also archive them in the school. So if you don't get a chance to stay for the entire duration of this sort of meeting, then don't worry about it. You can always catch up with us later or watch it in your own time zone at your own preference. Okay, so let me show you what we are going to be talking about today. So, as always, we start sort of with stuff that's been going on, sort of top of mind things that are happening right now. We'll also talk about the latest updates, what is coming to the school soon, and also upcoming events. So that might be our meetings, that might be make-alongs, all sorts of things like that. So we're going to talk about that. I will highlight again the community. And also, we have some questions today. We have questions that we can actually talk about today, so that's very exciting. So we're going to talk about some questions that you guys have been asking inside the school. And also, the biggest portion of these meetings is to share the things that you have been making inside the school, what you've been learning, the kinds of projects that you've been creating. And so really, really excited for that part of the call. So let me share with you a little bit about what's top of mind right now. So I know that last month when we met, we talked about planning. And so I talked a lot about planning for the year, and I pointed you guys to a number of different tools that you could use for planning your year, thinking about if you want to make one big giant project or if you want to make a whole bunch of projects, maybe like 9 different projects. So I shared with you a little bit about what my focus was for this year. And I'm doing a lot of weaving, obviously, this year. I'm doing a lot of exploration of different weave structures, trying different things, trying new things, and then also in behind the scenes, trying to get really, really proficient at all of the steps, being really good at everything from threading heddles to beaming the warp in a variety of different ways, just becoming better at everything, just skilling up, I guess. And then in terms of machine knitting, I really wanted to focus more on using the machines and actually making things rather than just making swatches of things. I'm also doing a lot of writing about color and design. We're researching right now about plaids. What's the difference between plaids and tartans? How do you design a plaid? All of these different kinds of questions that we have about how to design with color in that sort of plaid and stripes design format. Looking at that, and right now I'm in the middle of looking a lot at working with hand painted warps. So how can I translate that information to you so that you can also do that as well? You know, learning how to paint with dyes, both acid dyes and fiber reactive dyes on cotton yarn, on protein fiber yarn, and seeing how you can weave with that. So that's what we're going to do. And then I mentioned that sort of behind all of this, kind of ongoing in the background, is that I want to continue spinning. I want to get into this consistent habit of always spinning, either on the wheel or on the e-spinner, but just to get into a habit of spinning so that I can make the yarn that I'm going to then use for other projects like knitting projects or weaving projects. And so I have here highlighted in red, how will we do this? And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, this is just like a quick review of what I did last month, talking about my Make 9 and the 9 different projects that I was going to work on this year, sort of the focuses, where they were going to happen, like which loom they were going to be on, which month I was going to maybe start in, all of this kind of stuff. So, if you didn't get a chance to watch the January episode, then this is what I went through creating this uh, grid of 9 projects. And then from that grid, I mapped it all out across the year and mapping out all of the projects that I was going to be working on. So, like summer and winter, double weave and waffle weave and stripes and plaids, hand painted warps, all of these projects along this side, and then mapped across all of the months. And so you can see here that some things have been checked off so far. We're right now getting, it's going to be March 1st tomorrow. So January and February, I'm looking at January and February and seeing how have I done with those 2 months. And so what have I done? What have I not done? Summer and winter, I did, you can see a little swatch here, and I've taken photos of that and I've been showing that throughout this presentation. But summer and winter, I was designing something with that and I managed to weave myself a little swatch here so that I can check the set, but that is going to be done soon. I'm just right now trying to pick colors, and that's always hard. Waffle weave stuff is also coming along, so that's another project on here, and so I'll show you that really quickly there. So that is done. And then hand painted warps, I'm right now in the middle of that and really trying to figure out like what kind of materials to use, because materials can be very expensive. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to use materials that are not going to break the bank, but at the same time give a finished appearance that you're going to want, that you're going to like, that you're going to enjoy, something that's going to be inspiring to look at and wear, and all these kinds of things. So I'm juggling a number of options for that right now as well. And yeah, so that is coming along. And then spinning for the night shift. All the singles are done. I literally just need to rewind all of those singles onto storage bobbins and then ply from them. And I haven't done that because honestly, I have been distracted watching The Bear. And so if you haven't seen this show, The Bear, I really, really encourage you to watch it. It's super intense. I loved it. But you cannot take your eyes off the screen to do anything else. So I have been doing no making because I've been watching The Bear. Um, yes. And then the last thing is this machine knitted gradient yarn project that I've been trying to do. So I have shown you from last month, I have 2 cones of yarn that have been wound from sock blanks that were hand dyed sock blanks. So they produce this big giant long gradient. I, wound the yarn from the sock blank into a hank. I washed it to get all the kinks out of it and everything like that. And then I wound those washed hanks onto cones using a cone winder. And so I have these 2 beautiful, perfect cones of gradient yarn. And then I started to put them onto my knitting machine using sort of like a colorwork pattern. And my knitting machine uses a punch card. And so the punch card got jammed in the machine. I managed to make about 3 inches of fabric, and then the punch card jammed in the machine. It was very frustrating trying to take this plastic punch card that was deteriorating, taking it out of the machine, and then taking all of the yarn apart and then rewinding it back onto the cones so that I can start again. So I am going to try this again. I need to make a new punch card. And so that's kind of where everything is at. But I want to keep referring to this chart as we go throughout the year because I want to really stay on track. And like Joseph was saying, yeah, it's a great idea for accountability. I am doing it, going to get it done. Because I do want to end up at the end of the year with these things that I said that I was going to do. But the only way that you can do them is if you check in with yourself every month, if you check in with yourself regularly and say, what am I doing? Am I actually doing the things that I said I was going to do? Or am I getting distracted with a whole bunch of additional projects that sort of came along out of nowhere? Like these. These are my double dragon socks that I finished. So in any case, let's move forward. So I can show you here, this is the current status of my loom at home. And I know it looks a little bit scary. It is not meant to be scary. It is very, very, very step by step. It is very step by step. But you can see here, I have a whole bunch of cones of white yarn. This is just 8-2 cotton, plain old 8-2 cotton. And I'm using a sectional tension box here. Tension box on the back of my loom. I'm doing a sectional warping process here. And this is purely just to make a dummy warp. Okay, so a dummy warp is basically a warp that I'm not actually going to weave on, but the dummy warp provides me all the ends that I need. Um, and I'm going to tie on one end of good yarn of my actual project yarn to one end of the dummy warp cotton yarn. I'm going to tie those together. And so you could use a dummy warp for a lot of different reasons. You could use it in terms of like tying on very precious yarn that you don't want to waste. So like if you're tying on cashmere yarn or say silk yarn, or in this case, hand painted yarn. So these colorful skeins that are at the front of the loom here, those are actually 8-4 cotton uh, skeins that were painted. They were warps that were painted during the fiber reactive dyeing class when we filmed that a while back. And so I'm finally breaking out those warp chains and I'm going to do something with them. But first, I'm going to set up this dummy warp and then tie on from the front to the back. It looks really complicated. It's actually not. And I'll explain it better in the course that we're going to actually put together. So, yes, and Joseph, you guys are asking about this mapping technique. Has it been discussed in a previous live office hour? So, yes, last month I talked all about planning and how I created this plan step by step. And part of just to quickly go back here for a second, part of the reason why these dates are the way they are is because a lot of the projects that I have planned are tied to launch days for courses or pattern launches. And so I work backwards from those launch dates in order to figure out what needs to be done at what point in time in order for things to be ready for the school at a certain other time. So that's kind of how I've done it. Yes, but I'm really, really excited to see what your plans might be. I know many people are creating their own learning plans throughout the year, and it's good. It's a good idea to come and revisit your learning plan every month, every couple of months, and see where you're at. So that is kind of what I am working on right now. Now, for latest updates in the school, I do want to let you know that the Color Play cards, like the deck of cards that we created here, those have come into the studio. So those are now all available now. So if you wanted one, if you were waiting for one, these color cards are available now. And the color cards just really give you an opportunity to kind of like lay down all of the chips, the color chips, and make different combinations of colors to see what you like. It's useful for project planning. If you're trying to make a 4-color project or a 3-color project and you're trying to figure out which colors to put together, this color deck can help you with that. And so that is available right now. It took a couple of weeks for them to print it and ship it to us and everything, and so that's what we were waiting for, but it's ready now. The other thing that is ready that recently launched that we've been super, super, super excited about is Kim McKenna's class called Spin a Braid 5 Ways. So you can see here in this one case, she's taken one braid, one color called Beachside Brunch, and she's spun it in 5 different, completely different ways to produce completely different kinds of colorways. Like the yarns are completely different. And so this has been really, really fun and exciting to see. And so we're going to definitely do more with this concept for the rest of the year. And so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. But this is a course that recently came out, and there's a couple of tutorials that came with it as well. So I encourage you to take a look at Kim's class. If you like spinning with color, this is one to definitely watch. As well, we are just finishing up our Overshot videos. So those are being edited right now. Those are almost ready to go live. They will launch in March. And so Overshot is coming in March. So you can see my lovely little sample with all the little circles here. It's very, very satisfying to be able to control all of the different aspects of what you're creating on the loom here in order to create like those perfect circles. It feels so good. It feels so good. So I'm really, really excited to share that with you guys. As well, I have another photo here of Crackle. Crackle is amazing. This is a funny weave structure that can be woven in so many different ways. And I just finished the content of the workbook for Crackle. And the more I look at it, the more I think this weave structure is kind of crazy, all the different ways that you can apply color to it. And so last month I showed a different photo, a different variation of Crackle, and it was like more like color blocks. But in this one, you can see like there are 3 colors happening all at the same time. They come out in different proportions, they have different kinds of color mixing. It's only 3 colors, but it's doing this crazy thing with the texture of the cloth. And I don't know. I think it's amazing. I want to make so many things out of Crackle. I really would love to revisit this whole idea. Um, but I'm excited that this is coming soon for you guys to see as well. And then again, as part of this block weaving sort of exploration that we're doing this year, the next block exploration we're doing is summer and winter. And so this is the sample that I'm currently working through right now, trying to decide what colors to actually use. This is my test. You know, I'm here, I'm using 3 colors down here, yellow, white, and turquoise, trying to see if that's good or if I should add some more colors or if maybe the colors should be purple or maybe they should be green. I'm testing a bunch of different things and also trying to find a way to beat square to make these look a little bit more square. They look a little bit squashy right now. And then after you wash them, they squash a little bit even more. So working a little bit on that and playing with that. But that course is also coming out later on this year. So that is what we have planned. But can you imagine like using this kind of a weave structure with something like a hand painted warp or something like a hand dyed yarn or a gradient yarn? There's so many mishmash things that you can do with all of these techniques. Now, in terms of upcoming events, this is what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so this is the idea that we have for this year because through all of our feedback, we ask our members very often for feedback on how are things going, how is the school going for you, is it supporting you in all the things that you want to learn and do, and over and over, we have had requests for more make alongs, and we were trying to figure out, well, what do we make together? Because everybody's focus is a little bit different. You know, some people like to crochet, some people like to knit, some people want to weave, some people want to use a rigid head of loom, some people want to machine knit. Like, so there's so many things that we could do with our yarn. But the one big commonality that we found is that majority of the people who are in the school or coming to the school are coming because they're spinners or they're learning to spin. And so what we thought is we could do a multi-craftual make along with the starting point being spinning. So we're going to spin yarn together in all different ways, but spinning yarn together and then taking that into a multi-craftual process. So you can take that yarn and use it. It's kind of like what Rachel Smith always says, use your handspun, use your handspun. So the idea is that we are going to look at Kim's class as inspiration. Okay. So Kim has this 5 ways to spin a braid, and we're going to start with one of the ways that people are always most curious about and have questions about and like to see, and that is basically fractal spinning. So starting in April, what we want to do is start a make along, starting with spinning, and April 1st, you can start spinning fractal spun yarn. So fractal spun yarn is basically, you know, taking your fiber, taking your braid of fiber, and then you divide it. And one section is going to stay as is, and then the other sections will get divided into smaller chunks. And then you spin those smaller chunks into one big long continuous thread. And then when you ply those 2 sections together, then you're going to get overlapping of some colors and the striping that happens out of this. It's a way of working with hand dyed color in spinning fiber. And it's a really, really easy way. You can do it with 2-ply, you could do it with 3-ply, you could do it with more plies if you wanted to. And so if we just start from the same starting point that we're all going to do fractal spun yarn, you can use whatever colors you like. You can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, we would love to see you take that yarn and make it into something. And so I know that we actually have so many patterns coming out now that would be really, really great for using with handspun. So I know that I've been talking about the night shift shawl for a while, night shift cowl. I made one of those. But there's also Andrea Mowry's released a couple of newer projects, the Traveler's Cowl, the Traveler's Shawl. These are all projects that would work really, really well with handspun yarn. And so that's going to be something that we want to do. So starting in April 1st, start spinning. Maybe you're spinning for 2 months, and then start to knit with it, start to make something with it, crochet with it, weave with it, do something with it. And then what we're going to do is in August, after July 1st, in August, we're going to do a sort of a roundup of all of the uh, looking at all the things that people have made, and we're going to feature some of those projects on our Sweet Georgia website. So if you have used one of our colorways, if you have used one of our fibers, then and you're taking progress photos all along the way, then we can sort of compile all that and share that with everybody through one of our project posts on the Sweet Georgia website. So that's what we're going to do in August. So this make along is open to everybody. It's going to be open to everybody in SOS. It will be open on our Discord channel. So basically, anybody who is in our Sweet Georgia community can participate in this. And of course, like I think the timing is really good because it also overlaps with a number of other things going on at the same time, right? Yes. So Greta's just posted to Andrea Mowry's website. Andrea Mowry also has her own it's called Spin It to Knit It knit along traveler edition. And so the idea is that I think she's starting in February and hers goes for a year. So it's February to next February. You can spin your yarn and then knit one of her traveler patterns, and she'll feature that as well. So, spinning with this fractal technique now with us, and then you can use that also for your traveler project. So that's going to happen as well. In July, we always have been doing Tour de Fleece for the past couple of years. So that's really a celebration of spinning and all different kinds of spinning. It's getting into the habit and consistent habit of spinning a little bit every day at the very least. And so that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to want to do this whole sort of cycle again. So it's about 4 months of spinning: September, October, November, December. 4 months of spinning, and the second cycle will be starting with combo spinning. So combo spinning is when you have like two different colorways and you hold them together as you draft them. So you're drafting 2 or 3 or more colorways together, and when they twist together in the singles, they are color blending in the singles, and it creates a completely different color effect. You could also do combo plying, which is to take two different colorways and ply them together. So there are lots of different things that you can do with that technique to produce, again, very different kinds of yarn. And so because October is when we always celebrate Socktober, we do a lot of knitting socks. I do a lot of spinning yarn to knit socks, so that might come up. And as well, in November, we're getting into the habit of doing a rigid heddle sort of make together or weave along in November every year. So there's lots of things happening throughout the year, a lot of ways that you can participate. But again, I feel like a lot of this all starts with hand spinning. It starts with spinning yarn, however you want to spin it, whether you want to spin it on a wheel, on an e-spinner, on a supported spindle, on a drop spindle, however you want to spin your yarn, but using these techniques. So I was just telling like Anita this morning that when I do fractal spinning, I do it a little bit, it's a little bit quick and dirty. I'm just stripping the fiber and then I spin it. But if you watch Kim's class, she goes into next level spinning for everything. So she's talking about like taking these strips that you've created for fractal spinning, and then she runs them through a blending board or through hand carders to basically comb and then diz out perfect fiber prep. And then she spins from this perfect fiber prep to produce beautiful, like flawless yarn. So if you already know how to do fractal spinning, but you want to sort of next level your skills, then I would definitely take a look at Kim's class and see how she does it, see what she does. And then I feel like I'm very much encouraged to also like skill up in this way, and not just do things the way that I've always done them, but like really look at doing things a little bit differently. So that is what we have planned in terms of make alongs for this year. Starts with spinning, and then make things that you want to make from it, from your hand spun, and really, really excited to see all the things that you guys produce this year. So that is that part. Feel free to ask me questions about any of that stuff. I am happy to answer about all that. We'll write up more about this and then explain further, because we will have prizes along the way and all of those kinds of things. So, to share with you guys again what is happening in the rest of the calendar for the rest of March, for March, upcoming March, you can see here on Mondays, the first and third Monday, we always have a crafternoon with Robin, and she hosts a meeting that's really fun and really light and just really casual. Bring whatever project you're working on. A lot of people bring knitting, you can bring spinning, you can bring weaving, you can bring whatever you like for these crafternoons. So that is Mondays. And then on Monday nights, the second Monday night of every month, I am going to host a weaving specific meetup. And on the fourth Monday of every month, Greta is hosting a fiber prep meetup. So last month we did it. And so for my weaving meeting, there was like a bunch of people here, and we all sort of went around the room and talked about what we're working on, what our plans are for weaving, and all these kinds of things, what we're working on, and kind of like providing some inspiration. Christine was on the call, and we got to see like a whole walking around tour of her new to her AVL loom, which was very, very exciting. And then in Greta's meeting it was actually this week. In Greta's fiber prep meeting, she demonstrated how she makes rollags on a blending board. And so there was a lot of conversation about that. So all of these things are on Zoom. All of these Monday meetings are on Zoom. So yes, the Crafternoon is a Zoom thing where you can see each other. Absolutely. And then the live office hours is the thing that we're doing right now. And then I do another live stream on the second Friday of every month, and that's called Taking Back Friday. And so that is on YouTube and it's available for everybody. And then we have this amazing thing that has happened at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. There is a community hosted co working session. And so this is members of the school who have chosen to meet up at this time, and everybody gets online. And it's a silent co working session. So you get online and you can chat a little bit, and then everybody works alongside each other. And then they work for about an hour. And it's wonderful to have sort of like people around you also working on things at the same time. And yeah, it's very, very rewarding. It's really great. It's a great way to actually get things done. Again, it's with the accountability piece. It's you say you're going to show up, and you say you're going to do the things that you're going to do, and then you do, and then you actually do get things done. So I encourage you guys to check those things out. Now, I have highlighted these 2 weeks just because those are the days of spring break here in our Vancouver Lower Mainland area. We have spring break with the kids. And so during those 2 weeks, I may be less responsive on email and on chat and things like that, because we will be running around a little bit. So just letting you know that those are the 2 weeks. Now, this is just a quick recap of those meetings. So the weaving meeting with me on Mondays, and the fiber prep meeting with Greta on Mondays. And so look, these are the rollags that Greta made during that call. And so she's made them with a whole bunch of these are the different sheep breeds that she's working with. So Rambouillet, Charolais, BFL and silk, and then she's mixed them with sari silk, peduncle. So a whole bunch of different things happening here. And so hopefully we'll talk more about actually spinning from rollags and stuff like that in the next couple of meetings. So that was really fun. And then Crafternoons again. That is the link if you want to go and see about the Crafternoons. Now, community stuff. This is just a reminder that we do have the SOS forums. We do encourage you guys to go in there. And this is the place where we share learning plans. Okay, so if you're writing your annual learning plan for this year, what you want to work on, what you want to revisit, this is the place where you put it. If you're brand new to the school and you want to introduce yourself, then there's also an introduce yourself sort of section. But there's a lot of information inside the community. So I do encourage you guys to go and check that side of it out. And if you prefer like a quicker, chattier sort of, kind of experience, then that's what our Discord channel is for. So on Discord, you can see we have it all separated out by all of the different crafts that we're working on. There's also sections for the different make alongs that we're doing. And so all of these, you can join all of these. If you don't see all of the channels, you might have to go and add yourself to the channels in order to see them all. But there are a lot of things happening on the Discord channel as well. So the events can be loaded to an iPhone or Android calendar. Yes, you can subscribe to the calendar using, there's an iCal export format, I believe, and then you can import that into a variety of calendar apps. Yes. And then, like I mentioned, this is the community co-working. But if that Friday time slot, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if it doesn't work for you, I do encourage you to suggest your own time slot. And so we have this section where you can make your own meetup. So if you find a bunch of people in Discord or in the community, in the forums that all want to meet at a certain other time, like Wednesday nights at, I don't know, 3 in the afternoon, then you can definitely use that room. We have a Zoom room that is always available for you guys to use. So today, what do we have? We actually have questions. And these questions are basically um, highlighted from the discussion forums. So I want to share with you guys some of these questions because they're really great questions. They're things that come up kind of over and over again. So we're going to talk about them really quick. So the first one is dye that won't exhaust. So Linda has posted about how she was having trouble rinsing out the excess dye when using certain things like primary colors. So she's trying her new yarn base, which is a superwash merino, 100 grams per skein, and she's using Jacquard hot fuchsia acid dye powder. She was only using it at basically 1%, and she was having trouble. She says the water looks like pink lemonade even after the 10th rinse. And so this is something that happens actually quite commonly. We come across this question a lot because some of the dyes, like, well, magenta, fuchsia, turquoise, sun yellow, there's a couple of dye colors that have a lot of trouble exhausting. And so there's certain things that you can do to help encourage them to exhaust, but it may not ever be perfect. And so one of the first things is to like scour your yarn. So there's a bunch of suggestions that were made in the forums, and you can go follow this link to find the whole discussion, or if you want to chime in as well. But Vicky was mentioning that fuchsia is very hard to exhaust, especially at higher depths of shade. So if you're going to like try it for 2% or 3%, then it could be actually very, very difficult to exhaust those colors. So maybe stick to a lower depth of shade, use less dye. You should also look at scouring the yarn, which means washing it actually with soap to get out any dust, dirt, any spinning oil that might be in there, anything that is going to prevent the dye from bonding directly to the fiber. And then she suggested testing the pH of the water to make sure that the pH of the water is exactly what it needs to be in order to get the dyes to bind to the fiber. And Charlotte chimed in as well and talking about how the bleeding of color, like this color not exhausting, is caused either by not enough acid, not enough heat, or not enough heating time. Okay. And so the acid, you have to remember the acid is there to lower the pH of the water in your dye bath. So if you have a lot of water, you have to add a lot more acid. Okay. So the acid has to be relative to the amount of water that you have. And so using those pH test strips to make sure that you are getting the pH that you want is going to be important for those. So again, yes, using a little bit less dye because the color here is actually very saturated. It's quite saturated. So if you're wanting something that's deeper or darker, Charlotte was also suggesting that maybe you try and over dye with some other colors that are a little bit darker or deeper, like maybe over dye with a purple or over dye with a navy, to get maybe a more saturated appearance, what you're looking for, rather than just going really super heavy with the depth of shade of one particular dye color. So that's one question. There's a lot of good questions in here. Um, the next question was also about Rolags, which Greta was making on Monday night. So Leanne was asking if Cheviot was not a good fiber for Rolags, or perhaps she should have carded the fiber more. And she was asking, in general, what makes a good Rolag? Is there any way that you can tell if you've made a good one without spinning it? So basically, Leanne was doing a breed study and she was using the fiber that came. So she received some South Country Cheviot through a fiber club and she didn't really know what to do with it. And so she was watching Rachel's class on down and down like fibres. And so she was going through that and then mixing the fiber with some silk, with Perendale, hand carding it, making Rolags on a blending board, and all of these kinds of things. And then when she actually went to go spin the Rolags, she found that the Rolags were very, very difficult to spin. And she said they were kind of a little bit sticky and all that kind of stuff. So she was wondering if maybe this fiber wasn't good or if she should have done something different. And so Rachel did reply and suggested that maybe the best thing to do when you're making these Rolags is to use less fiber in each Rolag. So you want the Rolag to be like really floofy and loose and airy. The ultimate goal of spinning from the Rolag is to make a really airy and fluffy kind of yarn, a woolen spun yarn. And so that's one of the reasons why maybe the fibers are all sticking together. Greta's also saying that maybe if the fibers are not scoured very, very well, it could make for sticky Rolags. If the fiber itself, the Cheviot, if it was already a little bit greasy, a little bit sticky, then it would probably also create a very compacted Rolag. And then what else here? Greta's saying that we do have a couple of tutorials, that we listed to right here, how to make a fiber Rolag and how to spin from a Rolag. So those might also help as well. But yes, you're saying down and down-like breeds are very, very good for Rolags. Sometimes it's just that they're wound too tightly and makes them difficult to draft. Okay, so just keep them nice and loose. So if you want to follow along with this whole conversation, that's happening on the Spinning Sheep Breeds thread with Rachel Smith. There is another really lovely series of photos on this particular thread, and it's about the organization of your spinning fibers. So if you're doing a lot of these blending board sort of experiments and testing different things, and you have like a whole bunch of silk in your stash and a whole bunch of different colors, and you have Angelina, and you have all these kinds of things, how do you go about organizing your inventory of fiber, and then how do you organize what you have made from each one of these things? And so there's a whole conversation in here about what to do with all the bits and bobs of fiber. What do you do with all the yarn that you spun? How do you keep notes about these things? And everybody does things differently. Some people, like we've seen Rachel write things down on index cards and then she keeps them in photo booklets, like little pre-made photo booklets. And so she might put some swatches in there. She might put some flyback samples in there. She might write some notes in there. There's conversations about like putting all of your fiber back into the original bags so that you don't lose anything. And then I know that Amanda has also replied on this particular thread and talking about how she uses a note-taking app called Obsidian, and she keeps track of everything using Obsidian, and then she's able to almost like cross-reference everything. So she can see if maybe this particular silk fiber was used in this sample and that sample and that sample. And so she's made notes like that. So I would love to hear more from Amanda about like more details about how she uses Obsidian for this, because I use Obsidian as well for writing, but I'd love to see how people use it for this kind of inventory note-taking sort of situation. There's another question here about unruly fluff. So Mary's asking, I seem to be left with a bit of unruly fluff when I'm down to the last piece of fiber I pull off to spin. So I either don't spin it or I have a bit of thicker yarn at that spot. Is there a way to prevent this, or does it just take time to learn to manage? I pull off a piece of roving that's maybe about 10 or 12 inches long and then pull it in half before I spin it. And so The advice given on this particular thread was kind of like you could use that little lump of fiber to join to the next bit of fiber that you're going to spin. You could also try to prevent those bundles of fluff from happening in the first place, where if you are spinning, to make sure that you're not holding the fiber supply too tightly, because if you hold it too tightly, then fiber will come off sort of like from one section, and then there'll be another section that hasn't been incorporated into your spinning. And so the advice has always been like hold your fiber supply like a baby bird. So you don't want to squash it, you don't want to hold it too tight, just really gently so it's not going anywhere. And when I'm spinning, I do notice that if I'm spinning too much from one spot, then there'll be a chunk of fiber that doesn't get incorporated. So you have to be really sort of cognizant of what you're doing and make sure that you're spinning across the whole width of your fiber or incorporating all of that fiber into your spin all of the time. And then I did take a class from Abby Frankmont like years and years ago, and she just called stuff like, well, this is floor fluff. This goes on the floor and it doesn't get incorporated into your spinning. If you don't want this like unruly bit of fluff or this ugly bit of fiber in your yarn, don't put it in your yarn. Just throw it away. And so I've always kept that sort of thought in my mind, floor fluff. You don't have to save every single last scrap of fiber. Not all of it deserves to go into your yarn. Some of it is just meant to be floor fluff. Maybe you card it into a crazy bat later or something like that. And speaking of bats, this is another question from Beth. Beth is asking, can you spin sock yarn from carded bats? She says, I've been spinning for a while, but starting to work on sock yarn. I'm blending my own fiber on a drum carder using 80/20 merino and nylon. And the consistency seems right. And the sock knitters I know like it, but my fear is that because it was carded, it won't actually hold up. Has anyone used bats for socks? And so this conversation was really great. Rachel chimed in and she talked about how she has spun sock yarn from carded fiber before, and there's no difference. The principles of durability really are that you need to knit that fabric really tight. You need to knit the yarn tightly so that when you actually wear it, that there's more durability. So I always say, like, I knit socks at a gauge where they stand up on their own. They stand up almost like cardboard. And so that is sort of the goal here, is just to knit at a gauge that is really, really tight so that the socks will hold up really, really well. But the carded fibers themselves will make like a yarn that's a little bit more airy, and it's going to be more insulating. So your socks will be warmer than if you had spun socks from combed fiber. So those are all really nice conversations that have been happening inside the school. Lots of help. If you do have questions yourself about anything that you're learning, I do encourage you to post the questions inside the forum, because the instructors are there, the instructors are answering. We have a great team of people here at Sweet Georgia as well. Our moderators, our dyers, everybody chiming in with answers as well. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And now we're going to talk about the things that you have made. So this first project I want to share with you is from Kimona, and this is actually from January, but it just missed the cutoff for the last live hours that I did. So I wanted to make it the very first project for this month. And so this is the color Gamp project from the Handwoven color class that we did. And you can see that she's used, I think it's party of 5. She used a party of 5 gradient colors and put them all together in this big giant scarf. It looks amazing. And she said, this is the best scarf I've ever woven. I love it so much. I'm very, very thrilled to see this, and it looks amazing. It looks amazing. So I encourage you guys to go check out her thread here where she's posted. It's on the Color Gamp thread, and you can see all the photos that she has of her working on this particular project. It looks amazing. I'm so glad you're wearing it. I wish I wore more of my hand woven stuff too. I think it's an inspiration. We should all wear our hand spun stuff. This one I want to share with you guys is Linda, and I think Linda is in the chat today too. It's fantastic. So this is the traveler shawl that we talked about earlier, using your hand spun to make the traveler shawl. And this pattern, because it's kind of like these garter welts, it seems to use the yarn in a really great way. It shows off handspun in a really lovely way, because it shows, colors transitioning and changing, and it's fantastic. So in any case, Linda spun this yarn from a whole bunch of different braids that she combined together. So it was different braids of merino, Polworth, and silk. And she said originally, Andrea mentioned that her handspun was about 12 wraps per inch, and but Linda spun it around 16 to 17 wraps per inch. And so she said that um, the big thing about this particular project and this handspun project is that she had to sort of unlearn her default spin. Like when we sit down at the wheel, we just kind of like make what we make. And I know that Linda, if you follow the things that she's made throughout all of last year, there was a lot of focus on trying to replicate sock yarn or spinning a really, really good sock yarn. So she got into this phase of spinning her default, which is now fingering sock yarn. so um, so she says old habits are so hard to unlearn. And so she was trying to unlearn those habits so that she could make a different kind of yarn that would be more suitable for a shawl versus being suitable for socks. So I think that this was absolutely fantastic. She was able to use all of these different braids, gather a whole bunch of different fibers together to make a much larger project. Right. So I know many of us who will go to a fiber festival, you end up with like a braid of this and a braid of that and a braid of that. What do you do with all of these things? If there's a way that you can combine them all, you can make more yarn and make a larger project. So I am looking forward to seeing if we all just end up making traveler projects this year. I want to share this one with you guys. This is the hand-woven bread bags. They're woven by Brianna. The pattern is actually from Handwoven's Little Looms, but she wove it on a rigid head of loom and using just mallow. And she said, so luxurious. It looks fantastic. If you ever want to weave something like this and you don't know where to start, we do have that class, Rigid Heddle Weaving Basics, which gets you started with learning how to warp a rigid heddle loom and get started with something like that. But it's beautiful. It's plain weave and with this textured cotton yarn, really, really lovely. A very simple stripe pattern, but these bags are gorgeous. And then there's a bit of conversation about sourdough baking in that thread as well. So please do go check that out. Congratulations on your project, Brianna. This one is breathtaking. This is amazing. This is a Croaker rug, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I do encourage you guys to go and check out Rachel's thread here. She called the thread Croaker 2.0, basically because Rachel actually wove a similar rug she says, in the mid 80s. And she's been using that rug since the mid 80s and it finally wore out. And so then she decided this is the time to make a new rug. And so this is a bedside rug that she's just woven. It is beautiful. She says it's about 30 inches by 49 inches, not including the fringe. She used a linen warp. She used weft, is a 3-ply wool from a local mill on Prince Edward Island. And then she designed the color sequence herself. And she figured out how to do this on a counterbalance loom. And so normally, crook rag is like a 3-point twill pattern, like threading. And so if you're using 3 shafts on a counterbalance loom without a shed regulator, you could have some challenges. It's an unbalanced weave. It could be a little bit frustrating, but she figured out a way after doing lots of research. She says, I can use all 4 harnesses on a straight draw instead of a 3-point twill and then still use 3 treadles. And so then she was able to use her counterbalance loom, kind of like the one I have behind me. Any of these looms that have rollers, you want to try to do a balanced weave on them. Yeah, Lisa, I want to make that rug. I want to make that rug too. I'm like, oh, let's make croak rag rugs this year. Yes. So maybe we should do that in the weaving class, in the weaving group that we have on Mondays. Just every month, report in on the rug that you're weaving. But this is absolutely beautiful, and congratulations on that. I encourage you guys to all check out the croak rag class if you have not already. It's a really, really, really fun way to play with color. Yes, we all want that rug now. This one I wanted to post because this is actually a follow-up. Last month, I showed Jennifer's hand-dyed warp. So basically this purple yarn here, this purple yarn is alpaca yarn that she says she got for about $8. It's like very, yeah, is wonderful. And then she was able to hand paint it. So she wound a warp with the alpaca and then she dyed it purple. And then that has been put onto her rigid heddle loom. And then she practiced this hand manipulated lace technique called Brooks Bouquet. And so that is what's made for this very airy and lacy sort of project. And then you can see that there's a tiny little, a bit of yellow that's been inserted in here. And so part of this reason is because she's trying to use colors that are inspired by spring crocuses. So, the flowers that first come out in springtime, the first flowers to come out are always these crocuses that are purple and they have like a tiny bit of yellow. It's perfect. It's beautiful. And so this is really, really lovely. So she says the alpaca fibers worked out really well. I wanted to bring in the yellow from the stamen somehow, and basically has been doing this occasional weft inclusion is what she's done. And then so she did it on a rigid heddle loom. It took about 2 weeks to wave 80 inches. And there's a couple of photos of her wearing it. It's very wearable. It's really, really lovely. So congratulations on that. And I'm glad that you shared with us sort of the process throughout. It looks fantastic. We have another lace on rigid heddle project here. This is by Lauren. And so she says that this is a continuation of learning after taking the lace class with Amanda Wood. And so she said she bought the light and lacy alpaca scarf pattern from Gist, and then wove this beautiful pattern using the Ode yarn. Ode is 100% alpaca as well. And so using one pickup stick, doing these lace techniques. So there's so many things that you can do on a rigid heddle loom that are not just plain weave. And so these are the things that Amanda Wood has been teaching us throughout the school. We have a whole bunch of classes here on what you can do with rigid heddle that's not just plain weave. So please do check that out. That looks beautiful. And I'm sure that this is really lovely and warm to wear. 100% alpaca scarf. Sounds wonderful. This project is very cool. We have featured shoelaces before. I believe Amanda wove some round, cord-like shoelaces before, but these are beautiful too. These are woven by Margaret, and she created a whole album of these. So I do encourage you guys to go check out the album, Tablet Weaving Shoelaces. But she's discovered tablet weaving, and she's also known as card weaving. And basically she tried it out. There's a whole bunch of photos of her, going through this entire process. But basically she was able to put the warp onto her rigid heddle loom and then use the cards in the front in order to create this pattern. It's amazing. These shoelaces are amazing. Like if you could see up close the pattern that's happening here, there's kind of like a diamond lozenge pattern happening with these two colors. It's so cool. I love it. And she said that yeah, so she was practicing with warp waste from a different project and just, trying to see how it all works. And now that she knows how it works, then she was able to put them on her rigid heddle loom. And then with some cards that you can get from Shacked. I have seen also people use just a plain, deck of playing cards and then sort of punching holes in the playing cards and using that. So there are definitely ways of doing this that don't require a lot of investment or anything like that. And you can create something that's just so cool, so fantastic. Yes, yes, everybody can learn how to weave now. Shoelaces, so cool. This one is top-down socks from Nancy. So she says, I finally finished my socks. I am so happy with them. This class and instructors and moderators are so helpful. And best of all, they actually fit. So the formula definitely helps, much better than my first pair. the Tough Love sock yarn, very soft and nice to work with. Thank you so much for all your support and clear instructions. Now I look forward to using my skills and getting started on the next pair. So if you have not yet woven a pair of, knit a pair of socks before, we have this class. It's class on how to knit top-down socks. So you basically start up here at the cuff, and then you knit the leg, then you turn for the heel, and then you start working the foot, and then you close at the toe. Okay, so this is sort of the way that socks get made. And the course is really great because it allows you to measure your own foot, put in all your measurements, calculate what you need based on what your gauge is, in order so that you can actually make a pair of socks that fit. So I'm really, really excited to hear that. The socks are like, I feel like it's a fundamental skill that is great for everybody to learn. So congratulations on your socks that fit. They look amazing. And we have this Swatchbook. So we've been talking about organization techniques. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more in March. So I do need to do some cleaning around here as well. But organization, and Seti has been talking about on this particular thread here. She has been knitting cowls, and now she's kind of like wanting to go into some different stitch patterns because she's been making the same cowl, I think, over and over again. And so now she's testing out different swatch patterns, different knitting patterns, and she wanted a way to sort of maintain and organize all of her swatches with notes. And so this is the swatch book that she's created, basically using a photo album and then slipping the swatch into the plastic sleeves of the photo album and then adding a little bit of notes on top of each one, like what is the yarn that was used, what was the colorway, what is the actual swatch pattern, what's the gauge that she got, all of these kinds of things. And so she was inspired by Robin because Robin was talking about how she keeps her swatches in plastic sleeves in a binder as well, and talking about that. So I would love to have more of this kind of conversation about how people organize their materials because this has always been a challenge for me. And like you guys cannot see, but off screen, there are like 4 giant sort of plastic bins of finished woven samples that are just in a bin because I don't really have a way of categorizing or organizing them very well right now. So I would love to hear if everybody else has ideas about this. But yeah, this is a great way of storing swatches. She says, I know that I didn't account for how thick these swatches were going to get when they were piled on top of each other. But despite that, I actually like storing them this way. They would be safe from friction, and if needed, I can take them out and I can feel the yarn and remember which projects these swatches were made for. So yeah, I mean, if you use like a really wide binder with plastic sleeves, then maybe the wider binder could hold sort of the depth of all of those swatches. But yeah, very, very interesting way of trying to store all the swatches now. And finally, last photo I want to share with you guys today because they are so colorful and amazing. This is by Robin. Robin is one of our moderators inside the School of Sweet Georgia, and she is extremely prolific. You can Robin's written a number of articles for us before, and she talks about how much stuff she has to do and how busy she is. And she, she's got family and she's got full-time work, and then she does Sweet Georgia, and then she like also makes all these things, and she's machine knitting and she's hand knitting and she's designing things and she's also weaving. And recently, like a month ago, she got herself an e-spinner. And so this is a thread where she has started talking about how she's learning how to spin on an e-spinner because she says she has been spinning for probably about 3 years, but it has always been with spindles. She's spun on drop spindles and then she moved to supported spindle, and she's been doing a ton of spindle spinning, but now to get started with an e-spinner for the first time. And so she is very methodically working through all of the classes. So she's been working through the spinning from scratch class, spinning with e-spinners. She's now doing spinning up a level, and just to go through everything very, very methodically. And so these roll eggs she prepped on a blending board. So fun, so pretty. And she has some other different kinds of fiber preps that she's also created that like have been dizzed, combed prep, all these kinds of things. because she's going to try different drafting methods based on Katrina Stewart's class, Spinning Up a Level. So there's some worksheets there that Katrina's prepared where you can work very methodically through, this is how I spin short forward. This is how I spin short backward. This is how I spin long draw. What is the differences between all of the yarns that I'm getting with all of these different techniques? And so watching Robin learn spinning has been so much fun. And so if you kind of want to follow along, I feel like this is going to continue. This is a lifelong journey of learning how to spin and improve your spinning. And so, yeah, I do encourage you to check out this whole thread about all of the things that she's been documenting about learning how to spin. She made art yarn or textured yarn last month as well. So you can look at that. Yes, fantastic. So wonderful work, everybody. It's so, so nice every month to see all the things that you have been making. And I appreciate Robin and Vicky and Greta and all of you guys for tagging me in all of these amazing posts to see what everybody's been making. Every time there's something wonderful, I think it's great. Somebody's tagged me. It's like, look at this, look at this. This is amazing. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So the last thing today is that I would love to hear from you. Like, if these sessions are useful to you, what you have found to be the most helpful thing in the school, whether that's been the meetups, whether it's been crafternoons, whether it's been the forums, or whether it's been instructors are applying directly to you, or maybe it is watching the new courses or waiting for new courses, whatever it is that is the most helpful and useful. I would love to hear about that. Maybe it's you want more make alongs or you want specific kinds of make alongs or something like that. But in any case, I would love to hear about that. I have a link here, schoolofsweetgeorgia.com/live Feb 2024, and there is a little bit of a survey. There's like a couple of questions there, and what we do is every time somebody answers one of those surveys, it goes into a pool and we'll draw from the pool to pick a winner. And this month the winner will win a braid of Corriedale fiber. So it can be whatever color you choose from what we are dyeing right now, but this colorway is that beachside brunch, which is the colorway that Kim used for that class. So if you want that one, you can definitely fill in the blanks, or you can choose from anything else that we have as well. But that is basically it for today. I appreciate you guys all being here for this. It is lovely to see all you guys chatting in here, and um, I just I look forward to these sessions every month because it's a nice way to see what everybody's been making and to get re-inspired. I think a lot of people have been coming to our meetings and coming to these for inspiration. And yeah, especially, seeing that Croaker rug. Now I want to make one of those this year. So many things to make and do. So thank you guys so much for spending the hour with me here. I will see you guys inside the forums or inside the Discord chat. And yeah, I hope you guys join us for one of those weaving meetings or the fiber prep meeting. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I will see you guys in the next one. All right. Bye, everybody. It was so nice to have you all here.